Today we're going to be making a bunch of custom medieval fantasy figures, and I'm also going to show you some really cool techniques to get more out of your parts collection. We have a ton of figures to look at in this video, so let's just get right into it, first with some elves. I've got these really nice tattooed torsos and heads that I thought would be cool to use for some custom elves. So with these parts and some of the legs from a barbarian CMF, we can make a elf wizard with a yellow gemstone staff. This new elf hairpiece is just a perfect match for this character, and I absolutely love how this guy turned out. With the other pair of torsos and legs, I can make a more barbaric looking elf with an axe and a tied back hairpiece. Now to go with these two guys, I think we should make a couple more elves. I've got these two shirtless torsos that I think would actually make for a pretty good match. With these new torsos, I'll add some rough looking legs, and now we can add the new Gith-Yankee heads from the D&D CMF. These face prints are really nice, and they have some mean looking expressions that just fit the vibe of these guys quite well. This group of figures has such an interesting look to them, and I think it'd be a lot of fun to make a whole army of these guys in the future. But for now, I think we should make a couple of more historically accurate looking figures. First up, let's make a Roman legionary. We'll take these beautifully printed legs from a Conquistador CMF and add them to this old Roman torso that I've added some new arms to. These printed gauntlet arms match super nicely with the figure, and to finish him off, all we need to do is give him some weapons and a helmet. I think this guy turned out looking fantastic, and in my opinion, looks even better than the original. Now let's make a samurai. LEGO made these lamelier plate legs back in the day, but unfortunately, I don't have the torso that goes with them. Thankfully, we can make a fake version by taking any old dark red torso and then adding the samurai armor piece to him. The armor covers the print anyways, and he looks basically the same as the original. I use this technique pretty much all the time to make extra soldiers so that I don't have to waste the original prints by having them covered up by armor. Anyways, next I want to make some more fantasy races. So let's start by making a Dragonborn warlock. We'll take this Luke Skywalker minifigure, remove the hands, and flip the torso around. Now we can add some gold hands back to the arms and add the Dragonborn head to it. I've also given the Dragonborn some black horns to kind of match the evil vibe that he has. And we can finish the character by giving him a piece of warlock magic. I think this guy looks really sick for as simple as he is. The black color scheme and the gold just goes really nicely together. To go with this Dragonborn, I want to make a Wolfman mercenary. Now hear me out, I love making random mercenary characters, and this torso and leg combo from Star Wars is just perfect for them. All we have to do here is give him an old werewolf head and a crossbow. The only other detail I decided to include with him is a cheeky little gold coin that he's earned from fighting. For as simple as this figure is, I really think it's one of my favorites that I've made in a while. He just looks really cool to me. Anyways, to round off the random fantasy races for now, I think we should make a Lovecraftian shepherd. Obviously, he's gonna need a sheep, that goes without saying, but for the figure itself, I thought I'd use another Star Wars torso and leg combo here. These parts are from an Obi-Wan figure, but I think they work nicely as the robes of a shepherd. For the head, I've actually got a couple of different versions that you can make. The one that I personally love is this squid head from the old Atlantis theme. This theme is really nostalgic for me, so I want to use it here. It has such a unique mold and print that I just had to include it. But if you don't have this piece, you could easily make him with the new Mind Flayer head from the D&D CMF. Now, I've always wanted LEGO to make some kind of medieval or Viking era Celtic village. So let's make a couple of Celtic chiefs and some warriors to go with them. For our first chieftain, we'll take the legs from Aragorn and add this fur-lined torso to it. I love how the fur looks on this torso, and we'll make it look even better by adding a cape and this fur neck piece to him. The neck piece lines up perfectly with the print on the torso, and to finish the figure, we're going to give him a sword and a shield. This guy looks really cool to me, and he's maybe a little generic looking, but I think he works as a Celtic chieftain. For the rival chieftain, we're going to take the body and legs from an old Highlander CMF and add some new modern pieces just to freshen him up. This face print matches great with this hairpiece, and Boba Fett's cape really suits this guy's character. We'll also make him an archer with the same torso and a pair of dark blue legs. I think these two look really great, and the chieftain with the red hair and the circlet around his head, it just looks great. As for the other chieftain, he's going to get two more warriors that are made up of a mix of parts like the barbarian torso and the Highlander legs. I am just a huge fan of these barbarian torsos, they just go so well with so many different characters. Anyways, next let's make some fantasy Vikings to go with those Celts. First, the Viking King. I've taken the classic Viking chainmail torso and I've added it to these legs from Pirates of the Caribbean. I love how these two parts work together, and now we can add some shoulder armor, a cape, and of course the all-important horned helmet. When I think of Hollywood Vikings, this is basically what comes to mind. For his queen, on the other hand, we're going to take the Viking woman torso from way back in the day and add it to these blacksmith legs. It's a kind of strange combination, I know, but I think it works here. For her cape, we're going to use this massive dark tan one. And for her face, I had to use this head that has a printed circlet crown around it. It just feels very Viking-y to me. I don't know if you understand what I mean, but it just does. I also love how the hairpiece shows just a bit of the crown, and this is maybe my favorite Viking that I've made since my old Berserker from last year. These two just feel very classic Viking fantasy to me, like you'd see them in an old forgotten comic book or something. Anyways, now let's move away from the medieval world for a minute and take a look at a custom pirate crew. First up, we'll make the captain of the vessel. He'll have this body and torso from Pirates of the Caribbean that'll add an old man head to and a super old hat from the original Pirates theme. This hat, as old as it is, I think it's like maybe 40 years old at this point, still looks so good today. This is a very simple looking figure, but again, I just think it works. Next up, we'll make the navigator. For his torso, I've given him a Star Wars one that feels very piratey to me, if that makes sense, and his legs are from the old Uruk-hai figures from Lord of the Rings. I've also given him this hairpiece that is a sweet dual molded one from a pirate CMF. And finally, for some accessories, he's got a golden cutlass and a compass. Finally, our last crew member is going to be made from this pirate girl torso and these legs from the Desert Warrior CMF. They are a fantastic looking combination and will also give her this classic feeling pirate hat with some more stereotypical accessories like a parrot. These guys are just a fun group of characters that I might make a mock for sometime in the future. Next up, let's take a look at some dragon trainers. For our first one, we're going to take the new dress from the Mind Flayer CMF and add it to this old Harry Potter torso. These two parts match up quite well together, and they are perfect for the Targaryen-esque look that I'm going for. Speaking of which, I'll finish off this figure by adding a black and red cape along with the new elf head and hair. I really like how this one ended up looking, and the whole figure is made even better by the new baby dragon piece. This has got to be one of the best new animal pieces that we've gotten in a really, really long time. Oh, and also I gotta mention this. Funnily enough, the slight skin tone error on her torso actually kind of lines up really well with the new skin tone used for the elf. I just had to mention that. It's kind of crazy how well this worked out in the end. But anyways, for our next tamer, we're going to be using the Mouth of Sauron's torso and this old black dress piece. To that, we're going to give her a cape and another Targaryen-inspired hairpiece. Unfortunately, I only have one of the new baby dragons right now, so this one's going to get the older mold, which honestly, this old gold dragon doesn't look that bad. However, I do hope that this baby dragon gets some recolors in the future because it's just way too good of a piece for it not to. Next up, let's make a witch and some dark elven knights. For the witch, I'm going to take one of the new torsos from the D&D packs as it has such a nice witchy looking print on it. And we're going to combine that piece with Boromir's legs, which match up really nicely with the torso. Like, to be honest, if I didn't know any better, I just assumed these two parts came from the same figure. They look basically the same. And for her witch's hat, I've decided on using this one from Harry Potter as it's just such an eccentric look, and I think it matches this character perfectly. And finally, we'll make her a simple staff with a blue gemstone on the end of it. For her dark elven guards, I've decided on using these Moon Knight bodies and legs as the base. The color scheme is super unique on these guys. They came out a couple of years ago in a CMF, and I just haven't gotten the opportunity to really make any customs with these before. Though we are going to cover up these torsos with some breastplates. And they're also going to get new helmets from the D&D set. As for their weapons, they've got some elven ones from Rivendell and these shields from the previously mentioned CMF. I love how this group looks a ton, and they feel really unique compared to some of the other armies and characters that I've made in the past. Now we are basically halfway through all of the figures in this video, so let's get into the second half with two of my favorite fantasy races that I've ever made in LEGO. Our first one is going to be a centaur. To these basic centaur legs, I'm going to add this old zombie torso and head from Pirates of the Caribbean. We're also going to give him this tiefling hairpiece that goes perfectly with the horse legs. And finally, I'll also give him a bow because, I mean, come on, it's a centaur. This guy just looks so cool to me, and I think I'm going to have to order some more of these parts because I need more than one of him for sure. Our other new fantasy race is going to be a Squidman mercenary. Similar to the Wolfman from earlier, I've taken a pair of body and legs that feel like a classic medieval mercenary. To this, I'll add a sword sling and this awesome alien head from Star Wars. Seriously, there are so many cool fantasy custom races that you can make just by using Star Wars alien heads. And you could even use some Mon Calamari heads to mix things up even more. But I have a better idea for the Mon Calamari. The Black Falcon body and legs are super common nowadays thanks to online pick-a-brick. So I'm going to take the standard Black Falcon Knight and simply add a Mon Cala head to him. This is such an obvious idea, of course, but it just works. I've seen some other people do this on Instagram in the past, and now that I've done it myself, I have to say, I get it now. Now, while we're on the topic of Black Falcons, I want to show you a couple of figures that you can make with their parts, since I'm sure you have some in your collection if you're watching this video. First, we're going to upgrade an old Crown Knight by adding a pair of Black Falcon legs. These legs are super versatile and they work great on the 2007 Crown Knight torsos. He does suffer from double belt syndrome a little bit, but we can fix that by removing the hip piece and replacing it with a regular blue one. Honestly, both versions look fine, but I think I do prefer the blue hip on this guy. For our final Black Falcon, I want to show you a way to upgrade some of your old Black Falcon torsos from the 80s. The classic 80s Falcons still hold up really well today in my opinion, but we can make them look even better by swapping out the arms for some metallic ones, and by giving them some simple dual molded legs and another new helmet. I think this guy looks great like this, but if you want to keep some of the 80s nostalgia, you can give him one of those old halberds and even a classic smiley head. It's hard to go wrong with the Black Falcons, so honestly just mix and match whatever you have. Okay, if you remember from earlier in the video, we made a couple of fantasy Vikings. Now I'd like to make some more historically accurate ones. For the man, we're going to take these gorgeous runic printed legs from the Viking village, and we'll give him the same chainmail torso from the fantasy one, this time with some realistic skin tones. To make him look even more realistic, he'll also get a dark orange bearded face and a helmet with the horns removed. Alternatively, you could give him this Viking helmet, but it tends to look a little strange without a big bushy beard under it. For the woman, on the other hand, we're going to take another one of these fantastic barbarian torsos that we've been using a ton, and we're going to add some simple dark brown legs to it. For her head and hair, I decided to take some cues from the fantasy one and give her the same hairpiece, but in a sandy blonde color this time. Finally, to make her a shield maiden, I've also given her a spear and a beautifully printed round shield from Cult Bricks. Let me know in the comments if you prefer the fantasy Vikings or the realistic ones that we made today. I honestly love both of them for different reasons, so I kinda can't pick one or the other. Now, since we haven't made basically any peasants in this video, I think it's about time. We're going to start off first by making a traveler, like an adventurer character. She'll get a pair of dual molded olive legs that we're going to add a Viking torso to. As for her accessories, she's going to get a massive backpack and a satchel on her side. For our next two peasants, I'd like to make a couple of chefs. They're both going to get some simple peasanty looking parts and some excited looking face prints. The woman will get a pan and a freshly caught fish, and the man will get a butcher's knife with a carrot. I just love making peasant figures because they're honestly super easy to come up with, and they don't really have to be as complicated as some of the other characters that we've made today. Speaking of, let's now make some more of those complicated figs. I've had these really interesting looking gold dragon parts for a while now, but I haven't really made any customs with them. So let's take this dragon armor piece and add it to these golden knight prints from the late 2000s. This is a pretty decent combination, but we can make it look even better by adding a cape under it to add a little pop of white to this very gold looking figure. We'll also add in this crazy gold helmet from Loki that conveniently can actually fit on top of the dragon armor. I could not believe that this worked at first, but I'm so glad I tried it because this figure just looks sick. So with our new Dragon Emperor, we can now make a couple of his soldiers. Our first one is going to use these parts as the base. To this, we'll add a big piece of shoulder armor with a flag attached to it. And his helmet and dagger are both from the old Prince of Persia sets that are super underrated in my opinion. This guy turned out looking maybe even better than the Emperor, so our last soldier will get toned down just a little bit. For him, I've grabbed a Luke Skywalker body and legs that I've added an old man head and hair to. These guys are really sweet looking and they have a bit of Eastern flair to them that I just personally love. Okay, next let's make a group of dwarves. I'm gonna make two of them with shirtless torsos that just feel very dwarf-like. One of them's gonna get a big bushy beard while the other gets a shorter chin strap style one. And we of course at least have to give one of them the helmet from Gimli. For their weapons, I'm going to give this guy a big old club, and the other guy's going to get a double-bladed axe. And then our third dwarf is going to get this amazing braided beard piece that I don't even know where it's from, and he'll also get one of these crazy winged helmets that came in the older castle sets. These guys feel and look a lot like the classic dwarves from 2007 that I grew up with, so I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. Since I'm now in that nostalgic 2007 mood, let's make a troll warrior. We'll take this torso from Star Wars and add some sand green arms to it so that it matches the skin tone. She's also going to get a piece of spiked shoulder armor and this new braided hairpiece that just works great for the trolls. And of course, she's got to have a massive bone axe as her weapon. Next up, let's make another monster creature kind of character. We're going to take the body and head from a Harry Potter figure and add them to this black dress piece. To finish making this undead Grim Reaper style of fig, I'm gonna add a hood piece and a halberd. For our final spooky monster character, let's make an undead knight. The base will be made with some simple but nicely printed chainmail parts that we can add the new skeleton head to. As for his accessories, he's gonna get a skeleton shield and a sword. Oh, and of course, for the spookiest of all details, he's gonna get a receding hairline. Okay, we've only got a few more figures to do, so let's wrap this video up already. Since I'm apparently in the elf mood recently, let's make yet another elf faction. First, we'll make the elf queen. We're going to be using the new Dragon Knights as the base for these guys, so she's going to have this combo of parts that I've shown off in a couple of other videos, which we can then finish off with the crowned elf hairpiece from one of the old Hobbit sets. I think this combo is a match made in heaven, and it just goes to show how good the new Dragonborn parts are. Now, she obviously needs a couple of knights to go with her, so I've taken some more parts from my Dragon Knight army to make them. This guy's got an axe and an elven shield, while the other one just has a regular old elven sword. These guys are so simple, but they look sick. Next up, we're going to make a couple of Forest Ranger type of characters. So I've made one with a lot of the orange pieces from the CMF, and I've also given him the cape from the Druid figure. The dark orange and dark green colors go super well together and makes for a very unique looking ranger. The other one uses some more standard looking olive parts, but it just looks so good and it feels like a modern Forestman remake to me. And finally, our last two figures are going to be some mounted knights. First up, our Wolfpack Cavalry is dressed in your standard attire for the Wolfpack, but he has a direwolf as his mount. And finally, our 50th and final figure of the video is a Forestman Knight with a reindeer for his mount. He's made with some beautifully printed parts from Lord of the Rings and has the Forestman shield, because of course he does. This video was seriously so much fun to put together, and I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I did making all of these figures. If you did enjoy the video, why not subscribe? I've got a couple of mocks that I'm making right now for some of the characters you saw today. And as always, thank you so much for watching.